Hi, everyone. I am here today with Julia Kristina. She is the author of Drive Your Own Darn Bus. She has a master's degree in counseling psychology. She is a therapist, a mastermind management coach, a researcher, a speaker, and the creator of the Breakthrough Coaching Program. She helps smart people learn how to be more in charge of their minds and emotions so they can reach their goals, love who they are, and live more fully and freely. Hi, Julia. Thank you for joining me this morning to talk about your book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus.
Thank you, Annie, for having me. I am so glad to be here and having this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I enjoyed reading your book. It has some practical takeaways that I'm starting to use. So I can't wait to share for you to share with everyone what it's about. So if you want to just jump right in and tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired it.
Yeah, so I guess what inspired it is I've been doing YouTube videos for a couple years now, regularly, pretty much every once a week. I go and record a YouTube video and talk about something to do with understanding how to make being human a little easier and a little better. And so I started doing these YouTube videos, started giving these shorter talks, kind of like 15 to 25-minute talks, and just putting this content out there and teaching people kind of what I was studying, what I was learning, what I was using with my clients as a therapist. And then people, I guess, just started to connect with it. And I tend to be a fairly honest person and cut through BS as much as possible. And it just seemed to be something that people were connecting with. And then decided about 2 years ago that it would be a good idea to put a lot of these concepts into an organized and really just just in a condensed format into a book, so that it was just easier to access. So people could be taking sort of the core of my teachings from those YouTube videos and just having them in a really accessible format and just laid out a bit differently, right? Because my videos cover all kinds of different topics. And so you could literally spend like hundreds of hours, well, maybe not hundreds, but dozens of hours watching them, which a lot of people really like doing, kind of have it as part of their morning routine or their evening ritual to listen to one of the videos. But this was a way to just make it that much more accessible. So then when a publishing company approached me and said, hey, we want you to write a book, I was like, okay, that is perfect, because I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I guess just needed that nudge to get it all together. Because let me tell you, it was not a small undertaking. I am an optimist,
Yes.
sometimes to my detriment. And I'm like, oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I kind of just have to take kind of, the main concepts from my videos and
Yeah.
put them together in writing. And it won't be that big of a deal. And it won't take too long. And it won't be too hard. And 2 years later of blood, sweat, and tears, the my book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus, is finished and out in the world. So
That's
my husband,
wonderful.
well, yeah, and my husband was like, I think it's going to be a bigger undertaking than you think. And I'm like, oh no, it's fine.
Well, I love your optimism because writing a book is hard work. And I'm an optimist too, but I do realize that there's a lot that goes into it. And I
Mhm.
honestly think your book flowed very nicely from one subject to the next. And I wasn't confused at all. I was able to use your exercises and takeaways, and I thought it was very well written. And I wondered, after you're reading, you're like, oh, this is so simple. But I was thinking, as a writer, that is not simple to organize it all like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we don't really realize. But that is the thing, right? The things that seem the most straightforward or seamless, there's a lot of work
Yeah.
that goes into making something seem kind of simple in a lot of cases.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm so glad it was finally, it's finally up to snuff. It's up to the expectation or the standard that I wanted it to be at. About 9 months in, I scrapped the whole thing and
Oh,
rewrote it, because I was
wow.
just like, no, this isn't the book. This isn't the book that I want to put out in the world. And I just want to really, I really want to honor and respect people's time that they're going to be spending reading this book, by giving them something that they love to read and that changes something for them afterwards, that changes how they think, changes how they feel,
Yeah.
changes how they're showing up in their lives, at their jobs, in their relationships, right? Just
Yeah.
changes their lives. I mean, that's maybe a bit of a lofty goal, but that's what I really wanted.
No, I think that's great. I think this book will change people's lives. I've started to see a little difference in my own habits and what I'm doing and how I look at things, my perspective. So talk about what kind of topics are in this book and who it's for.
Okay. So I get asked this question a lot, which is really interesting. People say, who is your niche market?
Mhm.
Is it men? Is it women? Is it working moms? Is it, millennials, kind of between that kind of 25 and 35 age range, or like, who is this book for and what's their demographic? And it took me a really long time to figure this out because I don't have an age or occupation demographic. It's very interesting when you look at my audience. Like I also have a monthly membership community where people come in and I teach and they do it in community and they have exercises and master classes and lessons and everything anyways. And I look at sort of the cross section of people in there, and it's men, it's women, it spans over pretty much all occupations. We have people from several countries around the world in there. And the age range is from about 25 to 75.
Wow.
Right. And so what my audience is, it's not an age demographic. It's not a gender. It's not a certain stage in life. What it is a personality type. So my work really seems to connect with people who tend to be highly sensitive people.
Okay.
Highly sensitive, empathic, people who tend to be really emotion forward, right? So just and very compassionate type of people, who tend to have big emotions and tend to be really just like loving, giving, caring people, and feel things deeply
Yeah.
and often get caught in those emotions. It's like for better or worse. So being a deep feeler, being a highly sensitive person means you're going to be more sensitive to everything. So we feel joy, I believe, at a deeper level, right?
Yeah.
We feel happiness at a deeper level. We feel love, like it just sort of consumes our entire being and our whole bodies when we love big. But then the other side of that is that we also feel things like sadness, right? It can feel all consuming, right? We feel worry a lot of the times in sort of these big big overcoming ways. And so, it's the two sides of the same coin, where I think being a highly sensitive person, being a deep feeler is your superpower. It's this incredible thing. But the flip side of it is it can make being human really challenging sometimes. And so that's a lot of my teaching is around softening the edges on the flip side of being a more highly sensitive person. So how do I keep all of these beautiful things that make me this compassionate, empathic, big feeling person? How do I keep all the beautiful parts of that while also not letting the more challenging parts of it take me over or hold me back or get in my way or sabotage my relationships or, like keep me stuck in my life because I get, overwhelmed with those feelings. So that's what this book teaches, is really just how to be able to manage your mind and emotions, no matter whoever or whatever is going on, so that you can keep living, fully and freely and bigly, and that's not even a word, but but be able to live your life and create for yourself the life that you want without letting sort of these big feelings hold you back.
Yes. I love your whole mindset and topic about your thoughts and how it just I don't know if it's control, like you'll have to talk a little bit more about it, like controlling your thoughts or thinking about things differently. If you could go through that just a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say it's managing your thoughts.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of like an aversion to the word control because,
Yes.
right, we can't always control what thoughts come into our minds, and we also can't blame ourselves, right? What we often do, we're like, oh, why can't I just get over this, or why am I letting this bother me, or why did I think that thought, or you know what I mean? And so we blame ourselves for our thoughts instead of just understanding that there's a whole slew of reasons why certain thoughts come into our heads, and we can't stop that. We can't like stop our negative thoughts or control our self-sabotaging thoughts that are coming into our minds. We can't control it. What we can do is when they do come into our minds, right? We can't control them from never coming in, but when they do come in, we learn what to do with them and how to manage them so that we become the director of our thoughts instead of our thoughts directing us.
Yes.
Right? We become the driver of our own buses.
Yes.
And that was sort of the metaphor behind the title of the book, is to become the director of your own life. So learning how to manage your mind, not learning how to control your mind, but learning how to manage your mind.
Mhm.
And, and it's not even about managing your mind fully and, never having any human moments of getting overtaken with certain thoughts or emotions, or, it's not about never struggling with anything, because that's just not possible. But it's about learning how to just at least manage your mind, manage half your mind, right?
Yes.
Like, can you imagine if, half the population of the world was going through the world with a half managed mind? How much different the world would be if we had half the human population going through life with a half managed mind. How
Yes.
much better the world would be. So we're not going for perfect, right? Because we're not perfectionism is another thing that can be so debilitating and really hold us back. So we're not going for perfect.
Yeah.
We're going for better, right? We're going for kind of just like moving towards halfway. So if I can manage half my mind, about half the time or more,
Yeah. Yes.
then I'm going to be doing pretty good in life. I'm going to be
Exactly.
feeling pretty good in life.
The other thing you talked about, and you just said that you don't like the word control, it was like an aha moment for me when I read, you aren't in control. There's an illusion of control. And for some reason, I just went, what? Whoa, really? Because I try to control as much as I can. So, can you talk a little bit about this whole illusion of control?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we do. When I first learned that, like, really we don't have any real control over anything, I was like, this is bullshit. I need to control everything,
Yeah.
right? I mean, but we do. We try to control as a protection against vulnerability,
Yeah.
because we think that if I can control things, then I don't have to feel anything bad. I don't have to be hurt. I don't have to be disappointed,
Yeah.
right? I don't have to feel sad, right? I don't, it's sort of this fear of these feelings. So we try to control everything so we don't have to feel them. And so, yeah, but essentially, as we've learned over the past couple of years, control, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as full control,
Mhm.
right? There really is no such thing as it. We can attempt to, and we can try to, but it usually just it leaves us feeling kind of crazy when we're running around trying to pad the world in rubber so that we never have to get splinters in our toes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, this whole idea of control, it does, we do it because we're trying to alleviate anxiety, because we
Yeah.
think if I can have more control, then I don't ever have to feel anxious, I don't have to ever feel worried, I don't have to ever feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so it's this attempt to protect ourselves from anxiety. But what it ends up doing is creating more anxiety,
Yes.
because we get anxious about trying to control everything so that we don't have to have anything happen that's going to make us feel anxious, right?
Yeah.
And so, right,
It has
it's
the
this,
opposite effect on you. If you're like, I'm going to
right?
control this and you can't control it. And then you get anxious because you can't control it.
Exactly. Or you're getting so anxious. You're like, I've got to get all of this in control, and I've got to be on top of it all. And like, thinking about everything and anticipating the situation from every angle. And we're like, what if I miss something? What if I mess it up? Right. And we're like spending so much time trying to figure out how to control everything. And we're making ourselves crazy and anxious trying to do it. And so then people will say, well, Julia, then what do I do? If I can't control my way out of my anxiety, then what do I do? Right. And the opposite of anxiety is not control. The opposite, or I guess not the opposite, but the antidote to anxiety is not control. The antidote to anxiety is trust.
Yes.
It's trusting that I will be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Trusting that I will be able to be okay. It's trusting that I am resourceful and resilient,
Yes.
and I can handle life.
Yes.
Right? It's this whole
Powerful.
concept that Bandura, when a psychologist, I think he's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, I never know which one they are,
Yeah.
but came up with this concept of self-efficacy. Right? Self-efficacy is a trust in ourselves that we will be able to handle the challenges of life.
Yes.
And people who believe that they will be able to handle, they have high self-efficacy, they'll be able to handle the challenges of life, tend to feel less anxious, less worried, and they tend to need to control less
Yes.
because they're like, you know what, like obviously I'm going to be intentional and mindful, and I'm going to plan and prepare to a reasonable level. But
Yes.
I also know that I can't control everything, and I can't prevent any undesirable outcome ever from happening to me. So I do trust that I will be able to handle what life has for me. And so I don't need to get so kind of obsessy about controlling things.
Yes. I love that. And I think when I try to control every little detail, and then I'm so anxious about a situation, and then the situation happens and everything was fine, then
Yeah.
I want to train my mind to remember those times where I was really, really anxious and then everything was fine. So
Yeah.
okay. So just trust, like you said, just trust. In the past, the track record shows.
Got the receipts. You got the receipts. Pull out those receipts and look at them when you're starting to get a little loopy in your brain, right? Like all of us, and not you particularly, but like all of us, right? When your brain starts, and this is what the book teaches though, how to not let your brain go rogue. And
Yes.
I, because a lot of us, if you'll sort of appreciate the metaphor, many of us have like these border collies for brains, right? So if you know anything about border collies, they're sheep herding dogs or cow herding dogs. They are very smart. They have a lot of energy, right? And they are meant to be out, in the pasture, in the fields, running and like focusing on their job of herding cows, sheep, or maybe even pigs. I don't know. But so many of us, we have these border collie dogs as brains. But what we've done is we've brought this border collie into a house, and we've just sort of left the dog there to fend for itself, right? And you can imagine this dog that really has a desire and is basically bred to perform this very intentional action, being stuck inside a house
Yeah.
with nothing to do, without being able to be used like it's supposed to be used. And so what's it going to do? It's just going to like rampage around the house, tearing things up, making a mess of things, peeing on the carpet. Like it's not being directed
Yeah.
towards how it can exist in its most optimal state.
Yes.
Right. And that so many of us with our brains is we just sort of let our brains go rogue. We're just like, well, I don't know what the heck is going up in there. I'm just going to kind of let it do what it does. And we just let our thoughts and our feelings just sort of go wild.
Mhm.
And we don't actually know that we can direct them. Right. Our brains and our emotions, they want to be directed towards something helpful.
Yes.
And so that's our job as getting to in the driver's seat of our own minds. Is it's like, okay, brain, what is going on right now? And how do I need to be directing you
Yeah.
to allow you to kind of fulfill your purpose in what you can do? Like what is possible for you if I give you the right direction, if I put you in the right kind of state, you are going to thrive. But we don't learn this stuff in school, right?
No.
And so learning what to do when, instead of just when these, self-destructive or negative or self-defeating thoughts come in our brains, or these big overwhelming emotions kind of show up and start taking us over, right? We just sort of stand back and are like, well, I guess this is what's going to happen. And I'm just, going to let my brain go wild and my emotions go wild. And I'll probably even feed into it by then being like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Why does this always happen? Why can't I, get a handle on things? Why am I failing as a human? Right. And then we, feel even worse instead of being like, okay, this is coming up for me right now.
Yeah.
What do I do with it? Right.
Exactly.
Actually consciously tuning into our own minds and emotions
Yes.
instead of just letting them go rogue. Right.
Yes.
Instead of just letting them sort of be cooped up inside and start tearing things apart.
Yes. Yeah. And your book teaches us how we can manage all of
Yeah.
this. And I mean, it's it's the book is just amazing what you've packed in there. And it's really a fast read, but it's it's a book I will go back to and reference and do the exercises over again, because I don't think it's something that I am going to be able to to retain in just one sitting with
Yeah,
this book. It's something, and do you feel that way? Like it's meant to
totally.
be used over and over again?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like in the core concepts there, that's what we teach. I teach in the Shift Society, in
Okay.
my membership community. So I teach the core concepts and then people have to practice them,
Yeah.
right? Like, and people are going back over it and people are asking questions, right? Because it, once you start to really get it, then it absolutely, it changes your brain, but it's not a one and done. Right.
Yes.
It's like I equate it to like going to the gym. You don't just go and do like one workout and you're like, yes, now I am fit and I never have to lift another weight again. It's like, no, you show up and you
Yeah.
continue to lift those weight and build those muscles.
Yeah.
And then eventually, yeah, like you get stronger and your whole even body will change. If you're lifting weights, you can change your entire body composition by doing that in sort of the right way,
Yeah.
right? And lifting the right weights in the right way, you can change your body. And so
Yes.
it's the same way with your brain. By practicing the right concepts in the right way and going through the steps in the right way, then you
Yeah.
can absolutely, our brains are plastic, right? Neuroplasticity, our brains we can actually change our brains. And I see that a lot with people, who have been doing this work. And, the book is new, so I don't have the kind of feedback from people that have been practicing the exercises from the book, but people that have been doing the exercises in my membership community. And you'll have people show up and be like, oh my gosh, you all, this situation that normally gets such a big reaction about me, or this when this person says these kinds of things, I always take it personally, or these types of social gatherings where I overthink things, or when my partner says stuff that I get so offended by, I didn't. I
Yeah.
managed my mind around it and it was easy and it
Yes.
didn't get to me. We just had someone post in there how she just spent kind of several days with family. We all know how family can also be, it can be fun, but it can also be really challenging, right? Spending several days with our family because, all of our kind of old stuff can come up and triggers can get hit and dynamics just, show up. And
Yeah.
she was like, this was the best time I've ever had with my family. And she outlined how she handled different things completely differently than she had before because of the tools that she was learning and how she'd been training her brain over, the past several months. And she's like, it was a completely different experience than I've ever had before. And it was good,
Yeah.
right? It changed
That's
all of my
great.
relationships.
Yeah. So talk about this Shift Society. I'm interested in hearing about this membership community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a monthly membership community where, so the core lessons in the book, that ABCBO process, it's taught in a core lesson format. Like you go into the membership hub and there's the pre-recorded core lessons. And then every 3 months, a set of master classes are released to people. So we have a masterclass series on boundaries. We have one on self-esteem. We have one on people pleasing. We have, oh my gosh, we have there's so many master classes like that's, but we only release a few every 3 months so that people don't get overwhelmed. Because again, like the book, it's dense and it's one of those things that you go through several times. So again, yeah, we have master classes on dealing with self-sabotage, with staying and sticking to your goals, on self-compassion. Oh my gosh, we have master classes on dealing with triggers, right? So all of kind of the big ones, anxiety. Yeah, I'm just trying to even think creating your future self, like how to just really create the future self that you want to in whatever area of your life, and kind of breaking down how to do that. And then, so those are the kind of the pre-recorded components that are in your membership portal. And then every week I do a live component. So it's either every 2 weeks I do a Q&A session where anyone in the community can submit a question anonymously and then I answer it. They're almost like mini masterclasses in and of themselves, those Q&A sessions. And then once a month we do a laser coaching session. We call it the hot seat session, where people can get live group coaching from me in the group. We do it live on Zoom. People can submit and then have a live back and forth to kind of work out a specific issue they've been stuck on. And then once a month, we have some kind of special session, either another masterclass or a guest speaker or some kind of workshop to really kind of hone in on something that people are learning in there. And then we have a Facebook group where people are just actively involved with each other. Like I know there's have been members that have developed really strong, real life relationships. We just had two of our shifters meet up in real life. One of them was in the same state as the other one, and they met together and they had a really great time and got to connect, because you kind of build these relationships with people. And, it's so nice to not do things alone,
Yes.
right? Like one of the biggest, well, a significant part, we shouldn't say one of the biggest, but one of the most significant parts to our healing and growth process is seeing that we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And cutting through the shame of being like, what's wrong with me? Why do I struggle with this stuff? Why am I so, why am I so emotionally out of control? Why do I let this kind of stuff get to me? Right. And we just really judge and shame ourselves for being human, essentially. But then being able to see that like other people are struggling with similar stuff. It's not just me. There's
Yeah.
not something broken, flawed, or weird about me. This is what other like regular people go through.
Yeah.
And just cutting through the shame on that level is a
Yeah.
whole other experience that you can only have when you're in sort of an intimate group setting where people are being authentic and honest.
Yes.
Right. And
Love
that cuts through so much of it. So that's a really beautiful part of doing this, instead of just like getting a book or like getting a course and
Yeah.
just like doing it all on your own. But it's also been really interesting. I've heard from a lot of the shifters, that's what we call them, in the Shift Society, who've gotten the book and have been like, yeah, it's really great to have these concepts in writing, sort of in this format, this easy to access, to just, as like a resource. And a
Yes.
lot of them said, like, of course, I know all these concepts because I've been in the Shift Society for a while, but it was so good to just have them presented in a bit of a different way. And it just connects with your brain when you hear a similar concept in many different ways. It just makes all that many more connections in your brain and makes it much more like, it changes your brain and then makes it a lot more easy to access when you need it, right? Like when
Yes.
you're feeling overwhelmed, or when you're feeling really hurt, or when you're feeling really upset, or where you're feeling really irritated or annoyed, or you're feeling really anxious. It's like, okay, I need to get into my brain right now, and I need to know what to do and how to handle this so that it doesn't slay me, right?
Yes.
Or ruin my day, or get a big reaction out of me that hurts a relationship or leaves me feeling terrible, right? Like, what do I do? This is coming up for me right now. What
Yeah.
do I do? And sort of the more kind of connected we are to those parts in our brain that allow us to kind of get through this stuff, the easier it is and the faster it is. And then the more automatic it becomes. So
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I'm going to pick up that book many times and I'm going to check out your Shift Society too, because that just sounds wonderful. Like to be part of a
it's my
belonging.
favorite place on the internet. It is the people there. I just go through every night and I read people's posts, I respond
Yeah.
to people's posts, and I check in. And oh my gosh, the community, they are just so supportive of each other. And everyone is just so great and working so hard. And
Yeah.
yeah, changing their brains and changing their lives. And it's just so cool to see
Yeah.
human beings really just valuing themselves and their lives and kind of the short time that we have on this planet, valuing themselves to be like, you know what, I want better, right? There's a certain element of self-respect that
Yeah.
goes into working on our brains, right?
Mhm.
It's not saying that like, oh my gosh, I'm failing as a human being. It's saying I want better and I deserve that from me. And I'm here for such a short time. I want to feel better. I want to live better. I want to love better. I want to have better. And, there's something really powerful about that.
Mhm.
And there's a
Yeah.
certain element of self-belief where it's like, I can have that.
Yes.
Right. And I'm allowed to want that. I'm allowed to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. You want better. You have this one life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we do. And I mean, I'm not like anti, capitalism by any means, but we often try all these other things to make ourselves feel better. And I'm not saying that like, going out for a really nice meal isn't
Yeah.
a great experience to have, or like
Yeah.
buying a fun new winter coat isn't something that's enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
These things are, right? But it's not going to shift things at a deep fundamental level. It's
Yes.
going to give kind of a temporary hit of excitement or of pleasure, which is good. I mean, we need those things in life as well. But the danger comes in when we think that like something on the outside is going to resolve something on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That requires the deeper work.
It does. It does. Okay, so can we see your book again? You have it there?
I do have it here. Here it is, because you have the advanced reader copy that wasn't the final
Yeah, that's
it
such a
wasn't the
pretty
final
color.
jacket. That's the book right there. And it's
So
called
where,
Drive Your Own Bus, how to get mentally strong and into the driver's seat of your own life. I can't even read the title of my own book.
no, it's okay. So tell us where we can find it.
You can find it kind of anywhere right now. I've had people in India that have, messaged me to say, "Hey, I got your book from this book retailer in India."
Wow.
In oh my gosh, someone recently, what European? I think it was in Croatia. They were able to find it.
Gosh.
It's just being translated into Portuguese.
Oh my gosh.
So you can get it, you'll be able to get it in Portuguese in Brazil. A Brazilian
Wow.
publishing company is translating into Portuguese. I don't know if it's done yet, but you will be able to get it in Portuguese. So, but yeah, Amazon in North America, Amazon, Barnes and Noble in Canada, in Chapters Indigo. Pretty much every major book retailer is carrying it right now. So just
Okay.
type in the title, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. I think it's the only book out there with that title. And you should be able to find it fairly easily.
Oh,
And yeah, you
great.
can get started. And I hope my goal, Annie, and you and I were talking about this, and you were saying that it was sort of connecting with you in that way, is I want it to be a really easy, enjoyable read that you want to read because you're like, oh, this is kind of fun and it's interesting and it's connecting with me, but also really deep at the same time. So it's like, oh, wow, these are kind of pretty mind-blowing concepts that I'm going to go back to. But you
Yeah.
almost like, I want people to want to go back to it because it is an enjoyable read. So it's like this
Yeah.
kind of really kind of deep book that I tried to write in a really relatable, approachable way, but these deeper kind of honest concepts around, shame and failure and anxiety and, pain from our past, and like really these deeper things that we're all struggling with, or at least, most of us in some capacity at some point, and really just like presenting it in a really digestible way,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in a really sort of yeah, easy to take in kind of way. Um, but then
Yeah,
there's also
I got that out of it, and I hope whoever's watching or listening to this will go and pick it up. It is life
yes.
changing.
I'm so glad that you read it and that you were able to kind of get some shifts from it.
Yes, and
Being human doesn't come with a manual, right? Like we don't know. We're like we have this like the most powerful complex machine on the planet
yes.
between our two ears, and it doesn't come with a user guide,
Mhm.
and we're just sort of expected to know how to use it and then blame ourselves when we don't,
Yeah,
right? It just
yeah,
seems so backwards. It seems so unfair. We are so unfair to ourselves as human,
yeah, we
instead
are.
of just being like, okay, how about I get some help? and
Yes.
and like
Yeah.
don't see that as doing something wrong, seeing that as doing something smart.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Oh my
Mm.
gosh. This was a wonderful chat. I really appreciate you talking with me today and sharing your
It
book
has
with
been my
us.
pleasure.